Hey guys, it's Lumen. Today, I'll be discussing the current and or future value of certain cards from the Christmas seasonal. Normally, I usually do a review of most of the cards, but nowadays, I feel like expressing my raw thoughts is more valuable since most cards and machines usually aren't worth talking about. This year, Christmas has bolstered an aging submarine through the release of Christmas Menoa and the buff to Christmas Osiris, while also foreshadowing a future meta archetype through the debut of a new awakening through the release of new cards such as Christmas Selica and Christmas Xiahou. My goal today is to explore these ideas in detail. First up, let's talk about the aging submarine, Nautilus. On arrival, Nautilus was immediately heralded as the savior of North America and was used in the majority of builds for the Stardra title challenge ongoing at that time. Even after the title challenge ended, Nautilus remained as the premier endgame lead for months and continued to dominate during the Fairy title challenge as MD1 was a rare step back in difficulty. However, as PAD transitioned into the Space-Time title challenge and a new endgame era presided over by MD2, Nautilus fell off as its counterparts began to shine. Christmas Menoa basically fixes almost all of Nautilus's perceived problems. No personal damage, Menoa has double 10C and VDP. Not enough combos? Menoa gives 3 extra combos instead of 2. Lackluster recovery? Menoa packs an innate recovery multiplier. Color coverage? Menoa packs a red sub-attribute, which means Selica or Bright Parvati isn't mandatory anymore. The trade-off? A 10% reduction in survivability, which admittedly matters a little bit because tankability is everything nowadays. With buffs to Nautilus on the horizon, the green boat jumps right back into the thick of the meta with the help of a holiday mecha summoner. Meanwhile, Christmas Osiris gains huge buffs as he now operates as a full debuff cleanser with his new unlock and recovery buff effects on top of his minor time debuff. With amazing awakenings as well, a real and quite accessible alternative to Selica has finally emerged, but the real value lies in Osiris' color coverage. One of Nautilus's main weaknesses was the lack of a powerful dark sub, and while Halloween Chocolate is quite nice, Christmas Osiris feels like the first optimal green dark card ever since the debut of Nautilus. What surprises me is that Gung-Ho actually gave meaningful buffs to older cards that instantly rejuvenated them. Most of the time, Gung-Ho prioritizes new releases and usually puts very little effort into lackluster buffs because new cards equal more profit. However, anyone who plays Nautilus just received some great holiday buffs that will probably extend the green boat's value for another couple of months. Alright, let's move on to some of the more marquee releases. Both Christmas Selica and Christmas Xiahou will eventually debut a new Awoken skill in their Super Awakening selection, much like last year with Gremmary's Takoyaki. But unlike Takoyaki's relatively minimal impact, this awakening seems to portend a new meta. What do I even call this awakening? Big Blob? The Big Blob Awakening, subject to change, provides a 12x attack multiplier per awakening to the card's total damage when matching a blob of 12 or more linked orbs. Successful activation triggers a tiger animation overlay on the card, much like how successful activation of the 10C awakening triggers a dragon animation overlay on the card. As soon as this was released, I knew that it would be nuts for farming. You can activate off full board swipes, and you can also trigger both Big Blob and Combo Orb Awakenings with a blob of exactly 12 orbs, which is just a double adjacent row generator, which is admittedly rare but does exist. The Big Blob Awakening does suffer a bit more in endgame play due to the heavy orb consumption requirement, which also makes it extraordinarily difficult to VDP. But with the damage compressed into one awakening, yet again, cards have more available awakening slots to provide additional utility. Christmas Selica is a quintessential debuff cleanser, removing locks and time debuffs while providing minor orb generation on an extremely short cooldown. Unlike her flexible original form, however, Christmas Selica is much more specialized towards the Big Blob Awakening, with tons of rows on top of the Big Blob Super Awakening. Meanwhile, Christmas Xiahou solves the void penetration issue with his active while also stuffing in 2 super resist, which honestly looks more ridiculous every time I check him out. The problem at first glance is that both these cards function more as subs than as leads, which begs the question, who's the leader? Thankfully, our 2-month foresight here in North America gives us the answer, as the recently announced One Punch Man collab features a perfect lead in Genos. Unfortunately, Genos is untradeable and the machine looks pretty horrible to roll, so invest in Selica and Xiahou at your own risk. An old meta lead saved from inevitable power creep, and a new playstyle that may potentially take over the endgame. Who knows what the future holds? Thank you guys for watching, and as always, good luck and have fun.